Right? You seem to think that our plan is one of censorship.
Are you telling me it's not?
You're being silly. What we propose to do is not to control content, but to create context.
Metal Gear Solid has always been an amazing, weird franchise to explain. Even after watching those hour-long Metal Gear Solid timeline explained videos, you still don't fully get the whole timeline. It's a fun stealth action series on the surface, but anyone who's played it for more than half an hour knows that it's more than just a fun stealth action series. The game starts touching on things that feel way bigger than sneaking around, hiding in cardboard boxes. You've got shadow governments pulling strings, AI making decisions behind the scenes, agents with loyalties that flip 3 times, being quadruple spies in one mission, clones grown from legendary soldiers, and propaganda so deep it starts making you question your own memory of events. And so I tried revisiting the timeline recently, even watched one of those 3-hour breakdowns, and honestly, the more I learn, the less it feels like the point is to understand every detail. Because through all the chaos, there's one thing Kojima consistently gets right in every title of the game, in every title of the franchise: how information gets weaponized. And that's what is really relevant today, not the giant mechs, not the nanomachines, not the boss fights. It's the way the series treats information itself, not as something neutral, but as a weapon, like a tool. And in many cases, information is actually the real battlefield. And when you compare Metal Gear's ideas to real history, like the Cold War's obsession with secrecy, the confusion around major global events, the flood of media after 9/11, today's misinformation storms, algorithm-driven news feeds, and digital propaganda, so on and so on, the similarities don't feel really exaggerated. They feel kind of familiar. So in this video, I'm not here to talk about nostalgia or the gameplay mechanics, because there are a lot of those videos about Metal Gear Solid on YouTube. That's not really the point. I want to get into how Metal Gear Solid captures the real shape of the 21st century information warfare, the fake news, the memetic manipulation, the surveillance systems, the overload of information that makes truth hard to find, the echo chambers, and the way our sense of reality can get shaped without us even noticing it. And also, fun trivia facts to mention is that Metal Gear Solid released just 2 months after 9/11, and the team had to make last-minute changes because parts of the story suddenly felt, way too sensitive and way too close to real life. Things like the destruction of Manhattan landmarks and certain scenes involving the federal buildings and large-scale attacks. They didn't really rewrite the whole game, but they removed imagery and lines that hit way too close to what had happened back in 2001. Yeah, but that aside, it didn't change the core message though. If anything, it unintentionally made the themes about information, media chaos, and confusion around major events feel even more relevant. And that's why I'm really making this video. But mentioning all that brings us to the actual question behind all of this. If Metal Gear Solid keeps circling around these themes like manipulation, secrecy, curated truth, then what are we really talking about here? Because once you strip away the sci-fi, the clones, the quadruple spies, and the crazy plot twists, the core idea becomes really straightforward. It's weaponizing information and narrative, getting the public opinion on your side, so it's way easier to do what you want to do because the people believe in you and they think that what you do might be the best thing for them. Not in the dramatic movie sense, but in the real everyday sense that shapes how we see the world. The stuff that decides what reaches us, what gets us buried, what goes viral, and what quietly disappears. The stuff that pushes societies in one direction without ever firing a shot. So before diving into how Metal Gear handles all of this, I want to break down what information warfare actually is in the real world, how it works, why it does work, and why it has become one of the most important battlegrounds of the 21st century. And why it has become one of the most important battlegrounds of the 21st century. The 21st century. So, in the real world, information warfare means using facts, half truths, and media to influence public opinion and perception. Hey, maybe you noticed that I don't have my glasses on. Well, I lost them in this few minutes. And I think it's bad for the green screen thing because it reflects on my eyes, so I think it's better to do it this way. Anyway, experts warn that propagandists deploy tactics like context manipulation, presenting true information in the wrong set to mislead the audience. Another thing is that they also flood the media with noise, causing information overload so that people become confused or apathetic. So, when overwhelmed, audiences often split into echo chambers, isolated bubbles where each group sees a different reality. And meanwhile, memetic. Anyway, this word, memetic influence, comes into play as viral ideas and slogans, memes, that spread rapidly to shape beliefs. Finally, everything we do online is logged and fed into algorithmic systems, a phenomenon called datafication. These algorithms subtly control what information we see, nudging us toward certain viewpoints. The Metal Gear Solid franchise hits on all these fronts, from manipulation and overloads to social media echo chambers and data driven propaganda, were all showed in action long before 2025. So before we really dive back into Raiden, the Patriots, and all the crazy stuff happening behind the scenes, so context manipulation is when true facts are framed to mislead. For example, the fact checkers warn that news may be factually correct in content, but it becomes misleading when presented out of context. A classic case is misusing old photos or quotes to imply a current event. For example, armies of governments do this to sway opinion. In our world, we see doctored images and false location tags in war zones, like reposted tank images used out of temporal context that fueled panic or support for conflict. As the news outlet Al Jazeera notes, the most dangerous strategy in fabricating and spreading news lies in manipulating the informational context. Metal Gear reflects this brilliantly. In Metal Gear Solid 2, the first mission plays out as if you are Solid Snake on a routine operation. In reality, the context is fake. The game's AI Colonel deliberately deceives Raiden and the player by withholding truth. The real mission was the S3 plan, a massive experiment in controlling the narrative. And in Metal Gear Solid 4, the war economy scenario is another form of context control. Nations stage conflicts and news broadcasts manipulate Solid Snake's expectations, showing how what's left unsaid really matters. By twisting context, hiding the real colonel, faking a nuclear strike, or replaying images out of sequence, Metal Gear Solid shows how easily reality can be reframed. As one in-game warning puts it, even when facts aren't changed, omitting context can really distort the picture. This is exactly what real propaganda does. It feeds us fragments and half-truths, hoping we can't see the whole picture. And just imagine trying to find a single voice in a relentless barrage of sound. It's like looking for a needle in a mountain of haze, of hay, of grass. You know the metaphor. Anyway, that's the idea behind node flooding in information warfare. By inundating the media with so much data, real, false, or trivial, the signal to noise ratio really plummets. In human terms, we simply can't process everything, and psychological studies confirm that the constant exposure to excessive or conflicting information really leads to confusion, distrust, and paralysis. In other words, people tune out and stop believing anything. One journalist who waded through daily, the noisy, distorted social feeds, described becoming reflexively suspicious of every headline, the truth felt difficult to find, and eventually believing nothing. This tactic deliberately wears down public trust, turning news into a din where no clear truth can emerge. And the Metal Gear Solid franchise anticipated this overload and used it decades ago. For example, in Metal Gear Solid 2, the AI colonel famously warns that trivial information is accumulating every second and preserved in all its triteness. And the game even simulates information saturation. For example, in Raiden's world, every click and camera flash feeds the Patriot's AI network, and the S3 plan itself is a simulation run by an AI that floods Raiden's life with artificial events, testing if one can still find truth in a manufactured reality. And by games and Raiden struggles to separate real threats from virtual simulations, an allegory for our own age of disinformation. And even in Metal Gear Solid 4, news anchors drone on about battles and politics that Snake later finds out were staged or lies. The key point is that Metal Gear Solid doesn't need falsehoods to mislead. It can simply throw everything at the player. And just as information theorists predict a deluge of high-fidelity noise, polished but meaningless content can really overwhelm society. Now, Metal Gear Solid's narrative overload is our reality today, where breaking a conspiracy often means it competes with millions of other sensational or boring updates, and the audience gives up trying to follow it all. And once people feel overwhelmed, they naturally retreat into certainty, even if it's an illusionary one. Echo chambers form when individuals filter their media to agree with their beliefs. Modern research notes that online echo chambers filled with identity-driven misinformation are dividing society into two camps, each with its own, pseudo-reality. And within each camp, selective narratives are reinforced while opposing facts are immediately dismissed. And social media algorithms accelerate this by showing us more of what we already click on, what we love to see. And as you can see, the result is not to unite, but rather, it divides more. And the result is not the two sides sharing facts, but two separate belief worlds that barely intersect. Metal Gear Solid really nails this phenomenon in narrative form. In Metal Gear Solid 2's, I'm really mentioning Metal Gear Solid 2 a lot, but Raiden's consular, an AI colonel, even summarizes it. No one is invalidated, but nobody is right. And in other words, every perspective is allowed, and yet none become the definitive truth. And exactly like the two polarized camps on the internet, Raiden fights fools who believe competing truths, like Solidus Snake versus the Patriots, each sure that the other one is a villain. For example, the Colonel's line about Raiden's simulation could be lifted straight from a discussion of 2020's misinformation. Later in Metal Gear Solid 2, Raiden realizes that the Patriots broadcast endless versions of the past, ensuring everyone only hears what their bubble already accepts. And this divides the player's perception, just as real echo chambers fracture society. And even the game's structure is fractured. The players begins expecting Solid Snake, but the game forces them to adopt a new perspective, mirroring how our media forces us into unfamiliar narratives. In short, to really summarize it all, Metal Gear Solid shows that when everyone clings to their own filtered version of events, collective reality shatters and breaks like a glass. Kojima uses the original Dawkins definition of memes. Ideas replicate, mutate, and complete the same way genes do. Modern memetic warfare follows that logic. Viral images, catchphrases, and short posts that are deployed to implant beliefs and steer narratives. Governments, activists, advertisers, and online movements all use this because memes spread faster and stick harder than traditional messaging. Okay, this is the only example I could think of, but I know it's a little bit of a silly one, but do you remember GigaChat? You know, in the 2022 TikTok, I think it's a perfect real-world example. It started as a joke image, but the symbol evolved into a model for confidence, discipline, stoicism, and masculinity for young men. People use it to project dominance or as an aspirational identity. Entire communities treat it as a shorthand for a worldview. One it became a cultural anchor, shaping humor, values, and behavior. And that's memetic influence, functioning exactly as Dawkins described. Metal Gear Solid takes this concept and builds in entire philosophical conflict around it. In Metal Gear Solid 2, the Patriots AI doesn't just control information, it controls which memes survive into the next generation. The AI oversees endless simulated historical data, like the JFK's crash, Lincoln's assassination, curated cultural memories, and filters that what the public is allowed to inherit. Solidus and Dead Cells tried to seize this memetic archive because they believed the Patriots are freezing human culture into passive, pre-selected patterns. And Raiden's S3 training program is the cleverest expression of this idea. His entire mission is a mimetic reenactment of Shadow Moses. He's shaped, observed, and tested to see whether a person can be turned into the next snake by feeding them the right experiences and narratives. It's cultural programming disguised as heroism. Analysts point out that Kojima directly draws from Dawkins. Ideas leap from brain to brain, and digital systems can threaten the natural selection process by controlling which ideas get replicated. The strategy isn't far off from reality. Fiveball notes that the actors actively use memes to influence public opinion, and the Oxford Internet Institute describes this as the weaponization of memes. When a meme spreads, it can tilt political conversations, reinforce identities, or polarize groups faster than any official statement. Metal Gear Solid 2 kind of anticipated all of this. Protest slogans, disinformation, hashtags, conspiracy images, GigaChat style identity memes. They travel globally in minutes and reshape beliefs. And the game's point is simple and unforgettable. The real fight isn't over territory or weapons, but over who gets to define the ideas a society inherits. Controlling memes and controlling information really means controlling the future. And behind all of these concepts runs the engine of data. Our thoughts and preferences turned into digital information, and this is datafication. In practice, everything we click, like, or skip is being tracked, and private companies and governments then feed this data into algorithms that learn our behavior and even predict our decisions. And this was once science fiction, but today it's real. For example, the Cambridge Analytica's 2016 scandal, for example, showed how behavioral data can be marshaled to influence political outcomes, and by micro-targeting ads to personality profiles. Platforms' opaque algorithms amplify outrage and engagement, often prioritizing engagement over accuracy. Philosopher Shoshana Zuboff calls this surveillance capitalism, economic systems built on harvesting personal data for profit. And Kojima's Metal Gear Solid, of course, was remarkably onto this trend, with the Patriots AIs in Metal Gear Solid 2 and Metal Gear Solid 4 representing a form of surveillance capitalism in fiction. As one analysis noted, their network prefigures how tech platforms shape behavior through algorithmic recommendation, turning free will into a carefully managed illusion. And in Sons of Liberty, the selection of information fed to Raiden through Colonel's codec, messages, news feeds, etc. is analogous to an algorithm choosing your online newsfeed. The big reveal is that a hidden AI has been curating Raiden's experience like a playlist. Echoes how modern platforms tune what we see on social media. In Peace Walker, nuclear AI Zeke demonstrates the extreme of data-driven governance. An autonomous system rationally manages deterrence, minimizing human choice. Even outside storytelling, Metal Gear picks up real signals, and it's hard not to see parallels between the Patriots system and our own age of targeted ads, social credit, and predictive algorithms. In both worlds, those who hold the data controls the narrative, and whether that's a fictional AI named GW or the CEO of a social network. And once you start to see Metal Gear Solid through that lens, the entire series snaps into a single through line, and each game becomes another angle on the same warning. Information itself is the real battlefield. From government secrets to Cold War propaganda, from AI-driven bees to weaponized language, every entry in the series explores a different form of narrative control. Like other Metal Gear echoes, Metal Gear's critique of information runs through the entire series. For example, in Metal Gear Solid 1, it really puts an emphasis on government narrative control. For example, the US government and the Shadowmost conspirators buried the truth behind genetic experiments and arm deals. And even when Snake succeeds, the official narrative denies everything. The colonel on the codec being an imposter AI reinforces the message. Authority lies, so question every official version of events. And we're gonna skip Metal Gear Solid 2 because I've talked a lot about in the video, so let's go to Metal Gear Solid 3, which is set in 1964, and this one puts an emphasis on the Cold War propaganda. The story blends real Cold War politics with fictional operations. Both the US and the Soviet Union distort facts about the Voss, Sokolov, and their agendas. The game makes it clear that history is edited by whoever holds power, mirroring Cold War propaganda shaping public perception. And I really hope I do make sense to you, because I know I'm getting a little bit too deep. And then Phantom Pain, Metal Gear Solid 5 focuses on memetic and communication. The language virus denies speech itself, showing how culture can be attacked by corrupting the medium people use to think and identify. Characters know that in an age of information warfare, words themselves become potentially lethal. Skullface, and Skullface weaponizes terminology, proving that controlling language means controlling reality. And each title adds another layer to the same theme. Information is the real battlefield. From the Cold War spin to digital age manipulation, Metal Gear argues that narratives, not weapons, decide the outcome of conflicts. He's actually a genius. I myself could not really think of a franchise like this, especially going so deep that you don't even know what happens. And even after playing the games, you cannot understand the timeline. At least I don't. If you do, good job. But Hideo Kojima didn't just make an entertaining stealth game. He predicted a fundamental shift in power. The Metal Gear Solid series foresaw that we would move from gunpowder to gigabytes, that the weapons of tomorrow would include the algorithms in our phones, the memes on our screens, and the news reels in our heads. And we saw how controlling information, limiting freedom of thought, is portrayed as more tyrannical than tanks on the street in our world of TikTok and deepfakes. Many of the crazy ideas in the Metal Gear Solid no longer seem so, crazy and far-fetched. And today, governments and companies do control narratives in real time, and data-driven algorithms quietly shape what each of us believes. And Kojima understood that this wasn't really science fiction, and it wasn't emerging reality. So as we grapple with misinformation, spy cameras, and digital echo chambers, remember Metal Gear Solid's warning. The battle for truth is waged in our minds, and as one character might say, the ultimate cost of this new war is not a soldier's life, but our autonomy, our grip on what is real. And now, I'm finally done. If you really enjoyed this video, consider subscribe and maybe comment some things I missed or like some really great details from this series, and it would really help the algorithm. Yeah, kind of ironic speaking bad about algorithms. The engagement. You know the thing. Love y'all, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.